Probably just give it one more minute here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. So just to be sure you're in the correct meeting, I know we have a lot of meetings going on all the time. This is the Battery Electric Locomotive Workshop for the Invest Clean grant we received last summer. So we're going to be pretty efficient in getting this going. So first we'll go through introductions, and then we'll hand it over to Alyssa for the presentation we have today. The questions and answer session will be, you can post questions online there through the Zoom link, the button. And then we'll also have an opportunity here later in the presentation for question and answers and discussion. We can unmute you by raising your hand. So I'm Aaron Katzenstein. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer for the Technology Advancement Office. And let me just go down the screen here. I'll pass it over to May.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is May Wang. I'm Assistant Deputy for Technology Advancement Office. I'll pass on to Tom.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Tom Lee, one of the managers here overseeing open source and infrastructure incentives. I will send over to you, Jen.
Oh, hi, good evening. Well, actually, good afternoon. I'm Yujin Tan. I am acting manager here for the Off-Road Incentive and Inspection and Special Projects X Group. With that, I'll pass it on to Ping.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Ping Gui, Program Supervisor. I work with the VW Mitigation Program as well as part of the AB 617 programs. Alyssa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alyssa Yan. I'm going to be leading the presentation today. I'm the Program Supervisor for Off-Road Incentives, Special Projects, and Inspections in the Technology Advancement Office. Aaron, do you think with that being said, we can start the presentation?
Just real quick, Ian.
Oh, yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Ian McMillan. I'm the Assistant Deputy for the Planning, Rule Development, and Implementation Division. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's everyone that has their videos on. So yeah, with that, Alyssa, let's go ahead and get started on the presentation. And like I mentioned before, feel free to start putting questions in the Q&A session in the little button there in Zoom. And we'll try to get to those either as the presentation goes on or during the question and answer period later in this presentation. And so with that, I'll hand it over to you, Alyssa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So once again, we're covering the Battery Electric Switcher Locomotive Workshop as part of our Invest Clean initiative. As investors of clean good movements, collaboration with expert project partners is very vital to achieve South Coast AQMD's Invest Clean initiatives. So I first want to thank you all for contributing to this workshop event. We have a lot of background to cover today, and we plan on having a open Q&A with everyone present at the end of this presentation. So with that, let's begin. So today's discussion will cover an overview of the Invest Clean initiative, including its background, purpose, and key objectives. We will focus specifically on the fourth Invest Clean initiative, which is our zero-emission locomotive measure, outlining its goals and anticipated impacts. We will then open the floor for discussion on Measure 4, encouraging feedback and insight from attendees. We will also review the implementation timeline for Measure 4, seek stakeholder input on program development, and conclude with contact information for further engagement. It's important to note that the primary focus of today's meeting is for the development of our request for proposal, or RFP. So under the Inflation Reduction Act, the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program, or CPRG program for short, provides nearly $5 billion in grants to states, local governments, tribes, and territories to develop and implement ambitious plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollution. Approximately $4.6 billion were available for competitive implementation programs via regional partnerships. The primary purpose of CPRG funds are to leverage funding to maximize emission reductions within the goods movement sector, specifically for us, with assist to reducing air pollution, as well as support and stimulate the local job market. The US EPA awarded South Coast AQMD close to $500 million to support infrastructure, vehicles, and equipment strategies for for Invest Clean's initiatives. There are 4 goods movement measures. The first being charging infrastructure to support heavy-duty equipment. Measure 2 is for battery electric freight vehicles. Measure 3 is for battery electric cargo handling equipment, and Measure 4 specifically focuses on locomotive and its supporting infrastructure for zero battery electric. We partnered with 2 metropolitan statistical areas, which is the LAOC MSA, as well as the Inland Empire MSA. Of the 4 initiative or incentive measures, the incentive amounts that are available are as follows. We have Measure 1, which is $178.5 million allocated to heavy-duty charging infrastructure. Measure 2 for Class 8 heavy-duty trucks. And for Measure 3, it's for zero-emission cargo handling equipment. Under Measure 4, which is highlighted here, we determined that all levels of government are focused on advancing locomotive technology to achieve substantial emission reductions, health benefits, and public safety. Zero-emission freight locomotives have only recently become available for switchers. So implementing this measure will enable the accumulation of significant experience in reliable operation, facilitating the resolution of technical challenges, cost reduction, and ensuring a longer operational life for zero-emission switcher locomotives. Measure 4 will help reduce emissions from rail by driving the adoption of zero-emission switcher locomotives, which are difficult to abate due to long life cycle costs. The following lists out the eligibility and requirements for locomotive for Measure 4. Eligible entities include locomotive manufacturers and a supporting operator or owner, owners or operators, and other qualified stakeholders interested in applying for zero-emission switcher locomotive funds. The operating entity must be domiciled in eligible MSA areas, such as the one seen here. And we require that the existing equipment is parked or scrapped to demonstrate that emission reductions are attainable. The existing unit does not have to be a switcher, but must be a diesel-fueled mobile vehicle or equivalent. This could include other mobile equipment, such as trucks, yard trucks, rail car movers, or freight locomotives. Once again, the existing unit must also be domiciled within the eligible MSA areas. New equipment must be a zero-emission locomotive switcher and supporting infrastructure. The applicant is required to provide a request for proposal, which includes an emission reduction plan to demonstrate project feasibility, longevity, and project readiness. The project should also demonstrate how it plans to charge the switcher locomotive with supporting infrastructure. Funding will be provided to support infrastructure that will be used in tandem with the locomotive switcher as well. From here, I'm going to hand it off to Ian, who can speak more on the Warehouse Action and Investments to Reduce Emissions program.
Great. Thank you very much, Alyssa. One of the things that we wanted to do here, there's the pot of funding that Alyssa is describing, but at the same time, there's another pot of funding that is available that is independent from the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. And this is related to our Warehouse Indirect Source Rule, the WARE program. So that rule is applicable to about 4,000 large warehouses in the South Coast Air Quality Management District, so just our district. That map is shown on the slide. The rule provides a variety of options for compliance for warehouses related to things like near zero and zero emission trucks, charging and fueling infrastructure, cargo handling equipment, solar panels, etc. One of those compliance options is a mitigation fee that warehouse operators can pay in lieu of choosing one of those other options. To date, we've collected about $42 million in mitigation fees from warehouses subject to this rule. We're going to continue this rule beyond this year, but this is how much we have right now. And the funding really is related to, or is intended for projects that will be related to sources of emissions at warehouses. And so what we're looking to do is to see where there are other incentive programs like CPRG, where there's potentially some overlap in the kinds of projects that might apply for funding, that there could be some overlap, including even on some locomotive type projects to the extent that they would serve warehouses. There could be some opportunities to also use WARE program funding, either or, like use CPRG or WARE program, or potentially stacking, or depending on what the application looks like. We just think that it's a good time to do outreach on the WARE program as well. The funding would have to be spent in and around the areas with warehouses that paid the fee. So on the map, you'll see the different coloring that's in there. The map's a little bit old right now, but it's the general trends still hold true today. That if there was funding paid, for example, in the Inland Empire, projects that would try to access that funding would need to have some nexus to the warehousing in that part of the Inland Empire. And so it's tied to specific areas as outlined on that map and the counties in which those warehouses are. The other aspect to this is that for the WARE program, any projects looking to install zero emissions infrastructure needs to use a skilled and trained workforce. There are a few other requirements as well. This is all included in the board resolution for the adoption of Rule 2305. So there's some requirements that are listed in there. We do plan to advertise this WARE program funding, mitigation program funding in other workshops coming up. This is the first time we're talking about it publicly with any other solicitation, but just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that this other pot of funds is available in parallel and independently from CPRG. All right, that's a lot there. I'm going to turn it back to Alyssa to go through the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, so in regards to Measure 4 funding, we anticipate the funding amount of about $190.8 million from CPRG specifically, where other funding such as WARE may be used. And we hope to fund at least 18 or more locomotives and chargers. The tentative request for proposal timeline is seen below. We plan to release our solicitation April of this year, and where we'll have the deadline to submit proposals set at September 5th at 12 p.m. And we'll re-release a second round as needed until we meet the fund allocation total. The proposals must be submitted to South Coast AQMD headquarters via paper, and the project evaluation will take place between September through October 2026, with executions for contracts between October 2025 through August 2027. Procurement of the new equipment and deployment, we're hoping to have in contracts at any time between January 2026 through September 2028 to allow ample time for order and delivery of the new units. And invoice review and payment will occur between June 2026 and March 2029, which is concurrently in line with usage tracking. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for discussion in order for us to draft a solid RFP for our upcoming solicitation in April. For this slide, just working down the list, there are several items that I think would be key talking points. The first being leasing options. More specifically, would offering a leasing option encourage greater participation in the incentive program? Project emission reductions. What methods do you use to quantify emission reductions for locomotives and other mobile source operations? Question 3 is reporting requirements for rail operators. How do you currently report usage for operating locomotives and parked locomotives that may require maintenance, for example? And then for the fourth line item, which is replacement of existing chassis and other technology options, what are the primary operational or financial challenges in replacing existing locomotives? Question 5 is co-funding and stacking. We require applicants to inform us of any co-funding or stack funding from other grants. What other funding would you apply for in tandem with this program, if you know of any? For example, a few that I can name are the WARE funds or the Carl Moyer program, if you're planning to scrap the existing switcher locomotive. Another line item here is project life. We want to ask for some input on what project life you've experienced for locomotive projects. As you may be familiar with our programs, the more hours obtained, the better and more cost-effective the project is. And then the last item is data collection. So during the RFP process, we want to see if there are any suggestions on how we can standardize collecting data in regards to emission reductions or usage. With that being said, I would like to hear of any questions, or if anyone wants to raise their hand to contribute. I see that there's one. So there is one question. Can you explain what do you mean by warehouse, and why would there be locomotives in warehouse, please?
For Alyssa, you want me to take this one?
Yes, please.
All right, great. Good question. We think that it's possible that there are some, for example, some locomotive technologies or technologies on rail that would be going to warehouses and serving warehouses. We do know that there are some warehouses that do have rail sidings that can serve that warehouse. So it's possible that there could be some locomotive technologies that would fit into that, which would be different than something like, something that's operating solely at a rail yard. That's sort of a different kind of project than something that would actually be serving a warehouse itself. Hope that answers the question. And if not, if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the Q&A. Thanks.
All right, and then the next person I have raised hand for Yasmin Agilides. If you could state your affiliation as well. Thank you.
Hi, this is Yasmin Angelides with Earth Justice. Thanks for this presentation and congratulations on this funding. That's excellent. I just have a question regarding an earlier slide. There was something about, I'm interpreting it as like a scrappage requirement regarding the existing equipment. It would have to be diesel fueled mobile vehicle, but not necessarily an existing switcher. Can you just explain that? And since I can tell from the presentation that there's an interest from South Coast in this funding being used to reduce existing emissions, is there some sort of like equivalency that you would be requiring for the other diesel vehicle that's scrapped if it's not a switcher, like a truck or some other piece of equipment? Does that, and let me know if you need clarification on
Oh,
that.
no, that's an excellent question, and I believe we're planning on yeah, and that's why we're here to discuss and get some clarification on what we specifically should include in the request for proposal development. So our plan is to allow both scrappage and for non-operation of any existing diesel equipment. You're correct. So it could be on-road vehicles, it could be a rail car mover, just as long as the applicant can justify that the unit emissions are equivalent to an emissions of a standard switcher locomotive. We'd be able to move forward with funding. The way that we'd like to also view it is how cost effective it would be compared to other types of projects that are non-operational or scrapped.
Okay, got it. That's really helpful. And not to get too like in the weeds here, but would you be using like the average tier of a switcher in the basin, or what kind of tiered switcher would you be comparing it to?
I would see if is fan on. Oh, it depends on the project. So depending on the project, I think for the baseline we'd consider because it's a scrapped unit, right? So it has to be an existing unit. So we'd have to look at the existing unit's model year or tier if it's an off-road engine to see if there's any significant emission reductions.
Okay, got it. Thanks. I guess my recommendation would be to use either like a tier 0 switcher, like equivalent emissions to a tier 0, or whatever is the average and of switchers in the basin. Thanks for answering my question.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to add to the questions, so the more emission reduction that you can demonstrate, the better cost effectiveness. So if you would propose a lower tier, that will bring up your emission reductions and increased cost effectiveness. So just to keep in mind.
All right. So we do have 3 more questions open. One of them, and anyone available as panelists, feel free to contribute to an answer. For the first question, locomotive manufacturers, can you please explain how can they apply? Is it for R&D? Is it for a prototype unit?
Let's see, Alyssa, I could take that one. So we support the manufacturers to apply directly. So it could be manufacturers, it could be the end users, the railroads. But we just want to make sure that when the applications come in, there's a track essentially to put the locomotives on. So some of these applications may be, new kind of demonstration development projects for new companies, or prototypes, for that matter. So I think all the above, manufacturers can apply, but we do really encourage that, we want to see that track. We want to see these used. So there's a use to put these switcher locomotives or whatever the technology might be in this case.
Second question is, locomotive operations serving warehouses tend to be sporadic, and the hours/day are small compared to typical rail yard operations. Are you basing project reviews and approvals on warehouse switching time only?
Alyssa, maybe I'll take this one, at least on the WARE program side of it. Part of the reason that we are looking at opening both up at the same time is that it's a little unclear for the applications that come in how much some projects might be very warehouse focused and some might have nothing. And, is it one trip out of every 3 years that a locomotive technology goes to a warehouse? Is that now eligible? Well, they're going to have to compete against somebody else that is dominantly warehouse, at least on the WARE program funding side. So it's hard to get too specific, but I think it is something that we would look at. How much is it warehouse focused versus non-warehouse focused? And then which pot of funds makes the most sense?
All right. We do have a participant on call that has a raised hand, so I'm going to allow Bart Sawa to talk. Oh,
All right, thank you. I hope you can hear me. Bart Sawa, GTI Energy. So the proposal or the solicitation looks like it's written around battery electric locomotive with chargers. Are you open to other zero emission technologies?
at this time, it's oh, sorry, Aaron. I don't know if you wanted to answer that or not.
Yeah, thanks, Bart. That's a great question. When we wrote the proposal, the state of California received a Department of Energy award for the hydrogen hub. And so we really wrote this just to be specific on the battery electric technologies for the locomotives themselves. The WARE funding that Ian mentioned earlier is not limited to battery electric. It could be other technologies. So in this case, for just the Invest Clean funds, it would have to be a battery electric technology for the switcher locomotive. Now, saying that, it could be that to charge that switcher locomotive that's battery electric, you could use a fuel cell or some other technology. So we do encourage, the use of fuel cells, but when we wrote the grant, we just did not want to compete with the hydrogen hub grant that California was awarded.
Thank you, Aaron.
Smart.
All right. Thank you so much, Bart, for the question. And then in regards to other questions, there are there's 7 more. The next question is, for railroads/ports to win the grant, they have to scrap a current diesel unit. In addition, they can repower a switcher unit that isn't there and purchase it or have to purchase a new one. So our RFP, we're planning to make it a little bit more broad, where we don't necessarily require scrappage. We would require parking of an equipment or non-operation of an equipment. In regards to repowering switchers, at this time, I believe we'd like to only provide funding for replacements of switcher locomotives. I think I can leave it up to May to maybe elaborate, May or Aaron to elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. So if you are repowering some other units and as a replacement, we can discuss that during the proposal period. We need to see what's the percentage of new, what kind of repower, because typically that to repower a diesel unit to a battery electric, that it take very extensive modifications. So we'll have to see, and then it will be, prototype approval. Then you have to go through a series of a certification and approval. So we do have a deployment timeline. So yeah, we will have to see what kind of repower to determine whether that will be eligible or not.
Great. Yeah, those are a great question. I think, in terms of garnering to allow repowers would be important, but also making sure that they can follow the timeline that was proposed in the earlier slide. That would be important. So with that, I'm going to close out this question. And the next question is, for the Buy America, Sell America, due to battery stage in the US today, are we allowed to source them from other countries for the 2026 units?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we need to do for this question, we are planning on having a bidders conference once this RFP is released. We have some guidance questions in to EPA on this. So this is something that we couldn't answer today, but we will have to answer this, coming forward as the bidders conference comes forward, or, questions are open during the RFP process. So we are seeking more guidance from the federal government on this, on what's allowed for the sourcing for BABA. And hopefully we can provide more clarification on that in the next couple of months.
Thanks, Aaron. All right. For the next question from Nico Barcom, sorry if I got your name incorrect, but from GTI Energy. What is your perspective on including plug-in battery fuel cell range extended locomotives? Aaron, would you like to take a stab at this one, or Tom?
So the proposal is for the battery electric. So if that you are adding a plug-in battery fuel cell, we may be able to cover the cost for the electrification portion, but not, maybe the range extender per se, or the tender. So there will be a case by case. Hope that answer your question, Nico.
Thanks, May. All right, so the next three questions are from Bob Nixon. So the first question is, what is the status of this funding given that President Trump is attempting to freeze most federally organized or originated funding?
Erin, did you want me to jump in or did you want to?
Yeah, sure, Sherry. Why don't you handle this?
Sure. So I'm Sherry. I'm one of the attorneys here with the AQMD. So right now, I think, as most of you know, a lot of these IRA funds are under administrative review by the federal government. So there is some level of uncertainty about the timelines, regarding how long that review will take. And I think that's probably all we can say right now.
Thank you, Sherry.
Maybe I can just jump in really quick, and Sherry, feel free to kick me virtually if I say something wrong here, or anybody. But on the WARE program, I just want to make it clear that is an independent program that is just here at the district, doesn't have anything to do with federal funds or federal approvals or anything like that. So the WARE mitigation program is going in parallel, but that's a separate sort of thing. Thanks.
And the same applies for the Carl Moyer program too. I know that's listed here as well. Moyer program receives funds from the California Air Resources Board, which is state tax. So The next question from Bob Nixon is, given that some rail operators have already transitioned to Tier 2 and Tier 3 locomotives, the concept of using a SoCal fleet average for the existing switch locomotives has tremendous appeal. I agree with that, Bob. I think that's something that we could definitely look into when it comes to drafting the RFP for the future. The next question from Bob is, what is meant by parking a locomotive? Parking is just, it's the same as a non-operation of that particular locomotive while the new zero emission unit is in operation. We wanted to allow this flexibility in this RFP just because it is new technology and we want to ensure that that particular project is operating or in operation successfully before before you move forward with scrapping. So parking is allowed during this during the contract period.
Hey, Bob, also to add for parking in the proposal, you will have to propose a method of how you can ensure that the vehicle or the locomotive is parked. If your fuel tank is locked or using the PTC, you have a tracking devices that showing that locomotive not being used. We will want some sort of documentation or some sort of assurance that that is going to happen.
Thank you, May. And then the next question, so there's 7 more questions just in regards to comments and questions that are listed. This question is, what is the ranking criteria for proposals, highest emission reduction and fastest delivery schedule part of that? May, Aaron, Tom, feel free to contribute if you'd like, but our goal in terms of ranking criteria for the RFP is to consider emission reductions in terms of cost effectiveness from the baseline to the new units. And then we also take into consideration the ability to implement as soon as possible, not only the zero emission switcher locomotive, but the tied to infrastructure as well. May, Aaron, Tom, anything to add to that?
No, I think that was nicely covered, Alyssa. The one thing we do would like to see if there's comments on, what the ranking criteria should be, on thoughts on how to get these projects going. Definitely open for that as this RFP is developed.
Thanks, Aaron. All right. So the next question is, per 6 project life, ZE switcher technologies are typically only warranted for very short periods of time, approximately 1 year. It's hard to commit to a lengthy project life on a technology that is only warranted for a year. What kind of project life is South Coast AQMD considering?
So the longer the project life, the more cost effective the project is. So as you know, the proposal will be ranked based on the cost effectiveness and emission reduction. So the applicant is free to propose any project life, but you just have to demonstrate the cost effectiveness. It will meet it will be competitive.
I just want to add to that, May. So I think the project life, we could measure in terms of years. You can have one locomotive in place and doesn't get used very often, but we can also measure in hours usage. So, I don't see it's possible, but if someone were to use a battery electric locomotive 24 hours a day, that's very desirable. And if it's only going to operate for 5 years versus a project that's 10 years and the hours used are not that much, So we need to, well, hopefully we'll take that into account, like the hours usage, and also the years usage of these projects.
And thank you, Aaron. All right, so the next question is, what is meant by sub-award execution in the project timeline? So I was gonna go back there just to see the timeline again. So sub-award agreement is just the contract being drafted by South Coast AQMD to the awardee. So it's our plan to execute contract and kind of get the ball rolling in terms of timeframes on in-service dates and invoice dates as well as usage requirement dates. I hope that answers your question, Bob. If you have follow-ups, feel free to ask in the chat as well. All right. The next question is there any more information available about where funding? What is the timeline for a workshop? Ian, I think you could take this question.
Yeah. So on the first question, more information about where funding, there's a description of it in the board package that went along with Rule 2305, which is the regulation, the warehouse indirect source rule. We can I'll drop a link into the response to this question here in Zoom, where you can find that package. In particular, it's in the board resolution. You can find the most information there starting on page 6 of that board resolution. But I'll drop that in the link. And then as far as the timeline for a subsequent workshop, I mentioned that we would be having additional outreach on this. The workshop here today is on one measure for CPRG, Invest Clean, but there are a total of 4 measures there. And so the idea is that subsequent workshops for Invest Clean would also bring the WARE program along with it. So we would be doing subsequent updates and outreach as part of those other measures as well for the WARE program. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ian. So the next question is, how confident is South Coast AQMD that this funding will be received given the new administration? Sherry?
Sure, I'll take that again. We do have a grant agreement executed. I think we just have to kind of be patient with this new federal review process and see how that goes. But we don't know any more than that to be able to comment on it now.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, so the next comment is thank you, and thank you too, Nico. Comment after that is South Coast AQMD open to making the project life equivalent to the limitations of the OEM's warranty on the battery? I think that's definitely a topic for discussion in terms of warranty. This is the second question brought up in regards to warranty. And if somebody wants to maybe jump in on using raised hand, in terms of warranty, I'm wondering if there's a way for extended warranty to be provided by the manufacturer. And if so, what the costs would be. That's something that we could definitely consider. So that's my response to that. May, Aaron, if you have any response in regards to OEM warranty on the battery, let me know.
Yeah, well, I mean, from our side perspective, we're not familiar with the OEM battery warranties are for these locomotives, but I think the answer to this question is yes. The project life equivalent for the batteries would be good. I'm not sure if the OEMs on some of these manufacturers would warranty this and then have a replacement battery, if something were to happen to the existing battery. So I think all those options are on the table on these projects, and would definitely encourage, at least the equivalent life of the battery electric switcher locomotive.
Yeah, just to add to Aaron's point, though, our incentive programs, we don't shorten the project life because the equipment only have a 1 year warranty, right? We have been running the incentive program for past 25 years. We have a project life up to 15 years for locomotive, and their project life, their equipment warranty not necessary to be 15 years. So, we want to encourage the deployment, also want to encourage the OEM. If any OEM in the audience, if they want to jump in and answer this question, we'll be happy to listen. Thanks.
Thanks, May. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so the next question is, could you go over the timeline again, please? Assuming we have working battery locomotive units by the end of year and railroads that want to implement it by next year, can we receive funding in 2026 or only 2027? I believe there's some flexibility. Actually, Aaron, if you wanted to take over, that's fine, but yeah.
I saw that Andrew had his hand raised. I was gonna just pause, Alyssa, and see if we can go to Andrew.
Sure.
Andrew, I don't, do you still, there you go. Should be good, Andrew.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, no, I'm intrigued by the questions about the warranty and the project life. That is an issue to be cognizant of, because unlike current technology, which has been in use for decades, this is relatively new and doesn't have the service history that diesel technology has. So it's an interesting point, and any way that can get somehow considered in this process would be welcome.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the ability to include extended warranty is definitely something we can look into. Aaron, do you have any additional comments?
No, thank you, Andrew. I don't know, would you want to state where you're from, Andrew?
Oh, Pacific Harbor Line.
And you have a battery electric switcher, just to make note of that also.
Right, and it's working, but.
And I think Andy from Progress Rail would like to comment on the OEM warranty.
Oh, okay. Andy Anderson. Let's see if I can find you, Andy. Okay, Andy, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of really good conversation about extended warranties. As the OEM of a battery electric locomotive, I can tell you that that is something that we can certainly talk through what the options are for an extended warranty. There's also the possibility of doing service plans for batteries as well, so-called battery as a service type of opportunities. So I think that's something we can work through once this comes out, and we'd be happy to continue to discuss that in the next workshop.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for your input. From Progress Rail, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So I think we are continuing off of there's one question that was asked in regards to timeline, in regards to end of year railroads that want to implement it by next year. Can we receive funding in 2026 or only 2027? I believe there's some flexibility in being able to deploy the unit, of course, sooner the better, but we understand that we need to be flexible, especially with such a large unit as a switcher locomotive. In terms of invoice payment, our plan is to provide payment anytime between 2026 and 2029. However, we do want to see a timeline in the RFP or your intentions on how you plan to implement the switcher locomotive into your fleet. I hope that answers your question. Feel free to add a follow-up question if needed. Okay, so the next item is I am looking for more information on Measure 3 for off-road EVs. Maybe I'll have you speak a little bit on the timeline for the different measures and when we plan on implementing the remaining measures for this Invest Clean initiative.
Oh, sure. So we are planning on releasing our cargo handling equipment in April, May timeframe and follow with our truck solicitation and the infrastructure solicitation in the summer.
And thanks so much, May. So yes, I think our goal is to be able to provide Measure 3 within a year. I would definitely keep checking back at our website, the Invest Clean website, which will be posted in this at the end slide. The next comment I have is from Bob Nixon. Do these grants require a commitment of usage as exists in the Moyer program? That is a great question. Of course, we want to be able to demonstrate that there is emission reductions being obtained throughout the duration of the entire contract period. So usage is required. I would love some feedback on, how easy it is or how feasible it is for providing emission reduction tracking and documentation. If there's any comments in regards to who you currently provide usage information to, and if it's I want to make it as easy and seamless as possible to provide usage information during the contract period. So if there are any comments, I'd love to open that for discussion. But Bob, for the most part, I hope that answers your question. And then the last question we have is the locomotive solicitation is anticipated on April 4. What is the expected timeline of releasing the infrastructure solicitation to align with the locomotive implementation? Trong, that was from Trong Tran. That's a great question, Trong. So the RFP, or the request for proposal for this locomotive implementation, also includes the infrastructure portion as well. So we'll be requesting information on how you plan to implement the infrastructure for your switcher locomotive and having in terms of like the timeline of being able to implement both the switcher and infrastructure. With that being said, is there anyone else that would like to add to that response?
Yeah, just to note so as Alyssa mentioned, so infrastructure is covered in this RFP for locomotives. The infrastructure solicitation we're going to release, I think right now our plan is sometime late spring, sometime in the summer. That's really charging infrastructure for like Class 8 battery electric trucks. So it's a separate sector than the locomotive sector here that we're discussing today.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Tom, did you have anything to add or?
Yeah, just want to also add that projects can also apply for more infrastructure. And we have one opening in March. So it sort of syncs maybe a little bit earlier than locomotive RFP, but yeah, but that can potentially be stacked as mentioned earlier by Alyssa's slides.
Yep. Thanks so much, Tom. I'll be with you with the Moyer solicitation too. So, the next question is from an anonymous attendee. It's actually geared towards Andy. Andy, I think you're still allowed to talk. Can you explain what he means by battery as a service?
Yeah, sure, no problem. As a high level, that would mean that you would pay basically a monthly service fee for usage of a battery, but you wouldn't be the outright owner of the battery. And there's some benefits to that in terms of who has responsibility for end of life of that battery and that sort of thing. So something that we're contemplating doing. is providing battery as a service, where essentially you lease the battery portion of the locomotive from the OEM. It's just an option we're considering.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andy, for your response.
Sure.
All right. And then the last question is, when and where will this recording be posted? So I believe the recording will be posted, and Lisa, if you want to add to this, the recording is set to be posted on our news events webcast site, which could be accessed through our South Coast AQMD or aqmd.gov website.
That's correct. We can also put a link on the InvestClean website to make it easy for folks.
Yes, yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then I wanted to share the last slide, which is, hold on, submit all comments. So all comments, if you have any more left for us, please be sure to submit it to us by February 28th, 2025. Email investclean-locomotive@aqmd.gov. And please ensure that any trade secret information being provided is marked accordingly. There's a link below here to indicate or let you know how to mark it accordingly. So once again, thank you. This concludes our presentation. Really appreciate your time and your ability to attend today's workshop. With that being said, thank you so much. And from there, we'll just close it out.